how are you psychic? What makes you so special? But I never wanted to tell my story. The prediction is more not just that it's a recession or a depression, it's the exchange of the currency. 2050 is going to be the biggest game changer because, see, these little things that we're talking about now, like the financial thing that's going to happen with the change of currency, there was a high-level official connected to this intel on this assassination attempt.
I'd like to welcome to the show Annette Bricca. How you doing, Annette?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having
Uh,
me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you
Me
about your
too.
incredible mystical journeys that you've had in your life. So my first
Yes.
question, before we go down that rabbit hole of the near-death experience you had, what was your life like before the near-death experience?
So my near-death experience happened when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So my parents were divorced. I lived with my mom, my brother, and my sister, and I would, say that it was typical of in the 70s what a divorced family would have felt like. But I knew that I was psychic even at a really early age, but I didn't really care. I mean, I knew things that would happen. I would see my family members when they were going to pass over. I would see their faces melting. And a few people in my family and people I knew that were much older were psychics. So I was familiar with it, but I was just a kid. I didn't really care about that necessarily. So
Hmm.
when the near-death experience happened at a very young age, I mean, I knew right away what it was, but at 7 years old, it completely changed my life because even now I'm 57 years old. And when I think 50 years ago that this happened, once it happens, it can never not happen. You don't ever not remember it. I
Hmm.
don't, it's just like it happened yesterday, even now. So it kind of set me up for living a life of really of gratitude, of feeling grateful and thankful, even as a really young kid, and that there was a bigger picture of everything. So that the way that my life ended up evolving, there were a lot of really scary, terrifying things that happened. But I think that the near-death experience happened so that I did get a big picture feeling at 7 years old. So, at that moment, I knew it was profound. It did change the way I thought about things, but I didn't until I was 10 and then 12 is when I really understood why it happened. But it's transformative. I've said to a couple people in the past that whether or not people have had near-death experiences, it's like one of the greatest gifts you could ever have. I mean, I feel bad that people have to die for a period of time to have it, but having it, and especially at a young age, it changes everything that you think. It changes how you feel about the world because you know
So,
that there's more than this. I guess that's the meaning. You know that there is a higher being. So even if you're religious, even if I was Catholic going to church and I knew about God, but I was 7, I didn't really care about God, but I got it. I got that there was a big picture. And I remember after the near-death experience, like telling my family members about it. And they were in their 50s and 90s and 70s. And they're like, wait, what happened? And it's just a life-changing, game-changer event.
so when when this happened to you, I mean, you're right. It actually gives you a gift of understanding that this is not it. And
Yes,
that's a question mark that most human beings on the planet have. Like what happens after
right.
we die?
Yes,
But
yes,
you
yes.
had the gift of clarity, of truth given to you at a
Mhm.
very, very young age. So
Right.
what happened? How did you have your NDE?
So I was at school. I was in the hot lunch line. It was, big long line, but it was me and two of my friends, and there was a freestanding record player, like on a metal stand, and we were right next to it. And we were going to play a game that who could hold their breath the longest. And there was, like I said, three of us. I was going to go last. I told them I know that I'm going to beat you two, and I did go last. I did beat them because the next thing I knew, I was in the nurse's office because so I passed out. I hit my head on the metal stand. I was in the nurse's office, but before I came to, I saw a white light and I saw a tunnel. And kind of like the classic story almost of what you hear about a near-death experience, but not a tunnel that was small, like big, but you felt like you knew that you were surrounded by something. So I was in a tunnel and I felt myself like going towards this white light, but not like I was walking, like I was being like shuffled or scooted forward, like just being pushed forward, but not me walking. And I saw this white light, but But the thing that's notable and noticeable to say, it wasn't just a white light. It was, I could hear music, and it was also white light, but with colors as well. And it was almost like, on 4th of July when you have a sparkler and it's,
Hmm.
sizzling and sparkling, like
Hmm.
crackling, like kind of sparkling too. But you just felt complete love. I mean, and I felt like I was embraced by it, and you felt like an enveloping of love, and you're not afraid. And I was scooted towards this white light, and I just felt like I was home. And at 7 years old, I don't even think I know what I would even say the definition of home was, but I felt like I was home. And then all of a sudden I was told that I had to go and that I was being scooted back, but I did not want to go. I wanted to stay. And I also knew that it was not in the same realm. I knew that I wasn't like in the consciousness realm. I knew I was in a different realm. And I felt like I knew that I had passed away, or that I was passing, or about to pass. But I was told that no, now this was not your time. And then the next thing I know, I woke up, I was in the nurse's office. She was leaning over me and, just saying what happened. And I didn't tell, like I said, my family members till a day or two later. And then when I realized what that was, and, I realized then, but once I had that conversation, I felt like I went from 7 to like 30 immediately. I felt older. Even though I was
Hmm.
still a kid and I was doing kid things, I wasn't afraid of anything. I mean, it's really such a gift. That stupid holding my breath in the lunch line was one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my whole life. It was really fabulous. And even now, when I talk to people, and like you said, many people, the big question they have is, what is out there? What happens when we pass away? And I try to always, when I do a reading, convey a little bit of that story, because I do feel like it's a game changer, because I can say it with such conviction because I went through it. So,
Hmm.
sometimes they say if 1,000 people were to come in the room and they didn't believe it, or they questioned me on it, I would be able to tell the story in such a way that would make everybody believe, because it's like it just happened yesterday, and it was forever. It altered my life. But I believe that the reason why that happened in hindsight now is because of all the things that were going to happen to me, so that I was brave enough and courageous enough to get through what I needed to. So I do think it happened for a real particular reason.
So it was a primer, if you will, for
Yes,
what was
for
coming.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you came back, you said it took you a couple days to tell your parents. What did they say as good Catholic parents? I'm a
Well,
recovering Catholic myself, so
yeah, me too. I'm a recovering Catholic. Exactly what I say. I think that they were kind of afraid for me. I think that they thought that it was too much and it was overwhelming, and they didn't want me to be afraid that I had maybe, was about to die. But I wasn't afraid. I was the opposite of afraid. And I think that it only took a couple of days to tell them, because I was living with my mom, and my mom was not the stable one. My father was. So I didn't want to tell my mom right away because she was unstable. So I waited a day to talk to my father, who lived out of state, to tell him. And he understood it. I think he was afraid that I thought it was too much. I don't think I did a good enough job at the time of explaining, no, no, this was fabulous. It was a great gift. So, he accepted that I went through it, but I think that he was trying to make me not afraid, but I wasn't afraid at all. I was the opposite of afraid.
right. Now, how long did you keep this hidden to yourself besides your parents for a long time, or did you tell everybody you met?
Um, no, I didn't tell everybody that I met, because I was really trying to be a normal kid, because here
Right.
I was not really normal, but I was acting like I was normal. I knew things I shouldn't know. Even though I knew a lot of people that were psychic, a lot of my neighbors and the people I dealt with, my friends and their families, didn't really know about that or care about that. So I
Mhm.
didn't want to, I didn't really want anyone to know that I was psychic. I was, and so now on top of it, telling them I had a near-death experience, now I'm like an alien almost. So I didn't tell my outside circle. My inner circle knew, but not really like my friends and stuff, not too much later.
When did you decide to come out of the closet publicly?
Well, my whole story just a year ago, actually.
Oh, really?
So
So
I've
before
been
then you
doing,
weren't talking about it
well, I've been
publicly?
doing readings since I was 12, because
Interesting.
so I had the near-death experience, and then after that, my spirit guide came to me in a way that I actually saw my spirit guide in the room with my
Hmm.
sister. We shared a
Hmm.
bedroom, and so my spirit guide came to both of us. And in a way that, I mean, there was no question. I mean, I knew it was my spirit guide. And then after that, then I saw a videotape of my life when I was 10 years old but I didn't know it was of my life, of a chain of events that were going to happen. So I saw.
We are in a time of great change, and humanity is awakening more and more every day. Mankind needs insights on what is happening to all of us. That is why I'm inviting you to Wisdom from Beyond, a 6-day virtual summit designed to awaken your soul. Experience over 9 hours of soul-expanding channeling sessions led by 6 of the world's most esteemed channelers. Connect with the divine, receive sacred insights, and transform your journey by asking questions directly to the channelers themselves. This is more than just a summit. It is your gateway to understanding the profound shifts happening within and around all of us. Plus, when you sign up, you receive exclusive bonus content to deepen your spiritual exploration. Join us and step into the extraordinary.
So one night I was sleeping and in a state of, so I wasn't really sleeping. My eyes were shut, but I was awake. And I saw a videotape appear of all these different things that would happen to a person in many different stages of their life. So I was 10 at the time. I saw when this person was going to be 12, then 20, then 30, then 50, then even older than I am now. And at the time, I didn't see the person's face. And I actually didn't even know it was me because I didn't see her face. But because I saw all these milestones of different major things, like I saw something that would happen when she was 12, then I saw that she would get divorced, then I saw these different things. So I thought it was just a series of events for other people. I thought it was like the same kind of thing that I see about psychic things with other people. But when I turned 12 years, so one of the things that I did see when I was 10 was that there was a girl that was about 12 years old that she would be abducted. And I saw that there was a period of 3 days that she would be kidnapped, and then she would, be taken from her home, and that a lot of awful things would happen. And that I saw that it's like almost like watching a movie where you're rooting for the main character. You want them to get out of a scary situation. So when I was seeing it, I mean, I saw this little girl like terrified, like scared to death, and I could see what they were doing to this girl, and it was really horrific. And I was trying to cheer her along, and I was trying to like give her hope, like to tell her, you're going to get okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get out, somehow you're going to make it. And I was, like in real time, like, because one of the things I tell people is that time is an illusion. And even that seems like so confusing and so broad, but it was me cheering this 12-year-old on in real time saying, okay, just keep your wits about you, stay above water because you got to get out of this. So it ends up that 2 years later, that was me. I was abducted from my bedroom from 2 strangers. They kidnapped me in the middle of the night. It was over a 3-day period, and they put me in a car. They had duct tape in my eyes and my mouth, and I went in. So it ends up that it was 4 miles away from my home. The next day, when my mother realized that I wasn't home, she called the police and the FBI. And back then, it was 1979. As a child, as a minor, they didn't tell your name on TV. So they showed like my face, but they blanked it out. They didn't say my name. And so they had said that, here's this missing girl, and the FBI was at my mom's house. So that happened for a 3-day period. So when this was happening, I was like laying on a crack mattress. And so I had duct tape on my mouth and my eyes, and there was a Christian radio station on in this room, this bedroom that I was stuck in with these 2 guys, but they were having parties, and they would have this music on loud, but there was a Christian radio station on it. At one point, it kept saying, if you believe in God, ask God for whatever you need. God is here. God will listen. And here I am. I'm being, beaten, raped, drugged. And at this time, I didn't even know how long I had been there. It ended up that I was there for 3 days, but at that time, I didn't know. I had no concept of the time. And I thought, okay, if there's a God, yeah, God, I could use you. If you're here, I need you right now. And so I got brave, and I took the duct tape off my eyes, and I saw that there was a window in the room, and that and it was in September, and that the window was up, and that the shears were like billowing. So I knew that the window was up, and I saw that there was a phone right next to the mattress that it was on. So I hurried up, I picked up the phone, And I called my mom, and the FBI got on the phone, and they said, listen, you've been gone for a few days. Tell us, look out the window, try to describe your surroundings. And so I did, but then I heard these, bad guys come back up the stairs. So hung up the phone, put my tape back on my eyes. And then like about an hour later, whatever happened, they went back downstairs. I thought, I got to get myself out of this. They're going to kill me if I don't, and then I realized that, I was that girl that I saw 2 years ago. I was that girl. And even though, sometimes when I tell people now, they're like, well, okay, so you got kidnapped and you didn't realize that you were that girl when you were 10. I said, well, yeah, it's easy now to remember, but I had seen so many things, and you're connecting all of it. And I realized then that I was going to get away because I was going to get away, not because the FBI was going to charge through the door and save me. I had to save myself. So I hurried up, I got dressed, I jumped out of a second-story window, and I broke my foot, but I hobbled over to the next door neighbor. And I remember like it happened yesterday. I mean, there was a young guy who was like in his 30s. He was lying underneath his Corvette working on it. So I can only see his legs. And I thought, oh, I hope I can get his attention. So I guess I was crying, and he came out from underneath the car, and he said, oh, are you the girl that's been on TV? And I said, yes. And we hurried up and we went into his house, and he called 911, and the police and the FBI came. And so it ends up that they were caught. They did go to trial 6 months later. They were, both sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison each. They served 26 years in prison. But at the time, when I was getting ready for my trial, the FBI agents that were in my house, so there were two FBI agents on the case, and they said to me, when I explained that, I kind of knew that this was going to happen. And that's why I had the nerve to jump out of the second-story window. And they're like, well, what do you mean? How did you know? And I kind of told them. And they said, listen, we actually have a couple other cases, like missing person cases we're working on. Can you help us? And at that point, I had never done anything psychically. I just knew things, but I never like gave anybody information. I said, well, I think I can, but I don't know how. And they said, well, we need help. So whatever you can do will be helpful. So then I said, all right, well, let's try it. And so they gave me a little bit of information. And at the moment, I don't think we all thought that I would start solving cases necessarily. We just thought, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if I could help. And I actually, in that 6-month time, solved 2 cases for the FBI. So here I was preparing for my own trial. And then I was solving 2 cases for them. And that's just kind of how it evolved. And so from that point on, then 6 months later, they got, they went to jail, to prison, both of them. And so about a year later, I was 13 years old. So then I went and moved in with my father. And I said to him, listen, I need to know why this happened, because even though I got away and they went to prison and, everything's kind of okay, why would they pick me? And so my father showed me 2 New York Times articles. One of the kidnappers had escaped from a prison in Schenectady, New York, 7 months prior, and drove to where I was living in Michigan to come and kidnap me in particular. So it wasn't random. It was a setup. He was coming to get me. And so I said to my father, what? He escaped from prison? Because I didn't know that. At the time of the trial, when I was, testifying, I didn't have to be in the courtroom with them. So I got to testify. They were not in the courtroom. Then when they testified, I didn't have to be in there. So when my father told me a year later that, one of them was an escaped convict from prison, and I got really, really afraid. I thought, because thinking it was random was less scary than knowing that somebody escaped from prison and drove all this way for 7 months and came and got me. And, and I was really, really terrified. So then here I was trying to live a normal kid life. I was 13, 14, 15 years old. I was, a cheerleader. I was doing, book reports, whatever normal kids do. But then the FBI were contacting me and asking me to help them solve cases on the side. I wasn't getting paid for it. Then the local police, I was doing that for them as well. And even one of my best friends in high school, I remember I went over to her house one day. We were just hanging out, and her father, who was like the local police detective, who I didn't know was my girlfriend's father, when we both saw each other in the kitchen, we had to act like we didn't know each other because I was helping him on local cases, but I didn't know that was his daughter. So we, because nobody knew that I was doing that except the people that knew. So when I graduated from high school, I thought, all right, I don't really want this life. Here I was like solving all these cases. I was a psychic, but I didn't really want to do that. So I moved to California because I thought I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to just, I don't know, do something else.
So before we go to California, I want to go back for a second. A couple questions. One, why did that man Why did that man escape and go after you? What was the purpose? Why?
So this actually nobody knows except,
Okay.
a few people that know. So this is the first time I'm sharing this with you. It
Appreciate
ends
you.
up that, yeah, I appreciate you because I mean, and this is even why I came out with my story a year ago because of all the chain of events that I'm about to tell you. So
Okay.
it ends up that once my mom and dad got divorced, and like I said, my mom was the unstable one. We were living with my mom, me, my brother, and my sister. And I'm from Chicago. My mom had a few boyfriends. So we went from Chicago when they got divorced. We moved to Arizona and then we ended up moving to Michigan. This is where it happened to me in Michigan. My mom had a string of boyfriends and she had drug and alcohol problems. But one night, her and her boyfriend were in a bar and they were drunk or high or both or whatever. And they made a $5 bet with one of the other kidnappers that if they lost the bet, that they could come and my mom would leave the back door open and he could kidnap me. So he contacted, and my mom lost the $5 bet. So and he told her that one of his buddies had escaped from prison. He was on the way to Michigan. And so it ends up, so this happened over Labor Day weekend. On the Friday night that this happened to me, so I was going into 7th grade. That night, I wanted to spend the night at my best friend's house who lived next door to me. And that was like and my mom really didn't care where I was at. So that night I said, this is like my last hurrah before 7th grade. Can I spend the night at so-and-so's house that night? And she said no. And not only did she say no, she made me, my brother, and my sister go to bed like really early, like at 8 o'clock at night, which is, again, not typical of her. That night, my sister went to go shut the back door when my mom forced the three of us to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. And my sister saw that the screen door and the lock on the door were like broken. So my sister went to my mom and said, I can't lock the back door because it's broken. My mom's like, don't worry about it. My sister Barb said, no, we have to worry about it. What do you mean? And my mom's like, no, don't worry about it. So that's why it happened, because my mom made this bet. And yeah,
Wow.
so
Okay.
yeah,
That's a whole other
right,
rabbit hole.
right.
Okay, so my next question is, you said that you saw a videotape of your life or something equivalent to a
Yes,
videotape of your
yes.
life. When and how did you see that?
So my near-death experience happened when I was 7. And again, it gave me this feeling of, and at that point, I just thought, okay, I'm a psychic kid. I'm like a little bit weird. I didn't really want everyone to know that. And then I had the near-death experience. And at that moment, I just thought, well, maybe this is what happens to kids that are psychic, that you have like this near-death experience. So you have a bigger idea of the world. So at that moment, that's what I thought that's what it was. And I did feel good about that. Then um a couple years later is when my spirit guide came into the bedroom with me and my sister. My sister and I were sharing a bedroom. We had twin beds, and my sister was in the middle of the night and she started crying. And I woke up and she pointed to the door, and in the doorway, like the whole size of the door frame was like a silhouette or like a 3D figure or like a hologram of what looked like almost like a figure of like Abraham Lincoln. And when I say Abraham Lincoln, it was because he wore a really big tall hat. And at that time, I was like maybe 9 years old. That's what I thought. And so I didn't know what this was. I didn't know this was my spirit guide. My sister was really afraid and she was crying. And I said, just put the covers over your head. Don't look. I could not look. So I kept looking and I wasn't afraid. I knew that this being was there for me and not for my sister. My sister was just unfortunately there. And so I kept looking at this being. And then the next thing I know, I woke up the next morning and my sister and I were getting ready for school. And she was really upset, didn't want to go to school. And I said to her, do you remember? Because at that point, I didn't know if I was dreaming. I said, hey, Barb, do you remember? She goes, yes, I remember. Do you? And then when we compared notes, and then I went to people that I knew in my family that were psychic and other psychics. And I said, this being came, and they said, oh, that's your spirit guide. And I said, oh my, now what? What do I do? And so they said, well, he's going to help you. They said, name him. So I named him David because I didn't name him something spiritual because I was a kid. So I named him David. And they said, well, he's here to help you when you need help. But I didn't want help. I still didn't want people to know I was psychic. So I said to David, who kept showing up, listen, don't stop doing that. I'll let you know when I want to know something. You just, quit doing this to me. And I said, and by the way, could you quit stop making my family members' face melts? Because that's not helping either. I want to just ride my bike. I want to do normal things. So we kind of had this deal that when I wanted to know something, he would like put a message in my head, or I would put a message in his head, like saying, can you help me out? A year later is when I was sleeping, I saw this videotape of, again, this person's life. But again, I didn't know it was me, and I didn't know it was one person of all these things that were transpired. So when I ended up jumping out of the window, I realized then the near-death experience helped me, because it helped me know that there is a bigger picture. There's not just me making all these decisions. There is a higher being helping me, higher consciousness. And, back then, I mean, 45 years ago, because this is the 45th year of it happening. 45 years ago, I didn't think of higher consciousness. I didn't even know what higher consciousness meant, but I knew enough to know that there was a big picture. So I knew that the near-death experience happened to set me up so that when my spirit guide showed up, I wouldn't be so freaked out. And that I could say, hey, don't show up unless if I need you. And then to prepare me for the kidnapping and the rape that I went through, because now what I realize, I tell people all the time, I would never, even though I was psychic, I would never have done this professionally, for sure. I mean, there's no question. I mean, I don't even know, even sometimes I don't want to do it now, but I didn't have a choice. And I realize now that I had to go through the events that I went through, because I had to go through really difficult things to understand how lucky we are to be alive. And even though you can go through really horrible, terrible things, you can get through those. And I believe that we're here for two reasons. One is our human life that we're supposed to go through to get through obstacles and experiences to learn for our soul's perfection. But then once we can master that, if we can, then we go to what we call our soul purpose life, which is us living at a higher vibration where we are experiencing love and joy as much as we can to the umpth degree, for the rest of our journey. And I believe that that is about helping other people. So when I moved to California after high school, again, thinking I was going to, get out of this area. I didn't want people in Chicago, because I had moved back with my father at that time, to know who I was. And then actually the opposite happened. I thought I was going to be a genius and reinvent myself. But then I started hanging out with celebrities. They knew who I was. And so here I was. I did the opposite of what I wanted to do. I was more in the limelight. I was not only doing readings for like really big shots, I mean, even people now, 40 years later, that I've been doing since I was a kid. I mean, really well-known, very famous people. And then I was hanging out with them. And back then there wasn't a lot of remote reading. So I would, I was in my 20s hanging out with these celebrities and producers and movie stars and athletes. And then I did that for about 4 years. And then I got afraid. I thought, you know what? I didn't really have a reference to when these guys would get out of jail, but I knew that they would. And it started to terrify me that here I am, like, who do I think I am? Now I'm in California hanging out with like celebrities. So it would be easy for these bad guys to find out who I was. And I knew, and again, because it wasn't random, I thought when they get out of jail, they're going to come back for me. They're not, this is not going to be one and done. So after about 4 years, I moved to New York, and I thought, okay, now I am going to do the opposite. I'll be psychic. And I said to the universe and my spirit, I said, listen, if you want me to do readings, I'll do them, but I'm not advertising. Nobody's going to know who I am. And you better send me to people to me, because nobody's going to know anything that I do. And so that's what happened. People would come to me. They were referred, and I would like give them the third degree. I would say, well, who referred you? And they'd say, oh, my cousin Tommy. And I'd say, who's Tommy? And I was really, if you didn't tell me exactly who referred you, I would refuse to do the reading. And so that's how it just built. And so from the age of 12 until all these years later, I had this huge clientele, and I would do all these readings for all these people, and not just celebrities and wealthy people, but I mean everyday average people. But it gave me a life of gratitude, because I felt that I was helping a tremendous amount of people, but I was also the entire time always helping the police and the FBI with missing children, because I always felt obligated to do that because of my own situation. I remember being in that situation, like praying that somebody would save me, and not thinking that would happen. And to a point where I thought, they're going to kill me. That's it. I'm not going to get out of this. And so now, even though helping with missing children is really a hard thing to do and not something that I love doing, I never turn it down, because I want to always help whenever I can. Mm-hmm. So at this point, a year ago, I had an opportunity to be on somebody's podcast. And so I have throughout my career had many opportunities to be on. I was on TV few times. Did many radio shows. And at the time throughout my career, I wasn't even doing it to promote myself. I would have a client that would say, let's say have a radio show and ask me to be on it. And I would say, all right, I'll do it. But I wouldn't really even give my contact information. And so the reason why I agreed to do this podcast a year ago is because I found out so one of the kidnappers is on death row. When they got out of prison after 26 years, he reoffended and murdered girls and raped them, and he's on death row. The other one
Jesus.
that escaped from prison did reoffend. He went back to prison several times, but I found out that a year ago, he was going to be off parole for life. I found out he also lives 30 minutes from where I live in New Jersey. So I live in New Jersey. But so, the thing is that when all this happened, what is supposed to happen is the courts are supposed to notify you as a minor when something to this degree happens, when somebody gets out of prison for your own safety. But because my parents were divorced and then I moved with my father, I guess I fell through the cracks, and then I became an adult. So I was never notified that, they had gotten out of prison. So even though I knew that it would happen one day, I didn't know a timeline because they were sentenced to 30 to 60 years. I didn't know what was happening. And so when I randomly found out a year ago from my attorney, by the way, on something else, she said, she knew my maiden name, and she said, it appears that there's this person on parole. And I was terrified. And I said, she goes, is that you? And I said, yeah. And she said, he lives not too far away from you. And he was also trying to sue the state of New York because once you are a sex offender to that degree with minors and you get out of prison, you are forever banned from the internet. So you couldn't have Facebook. And by the way, I never had Facebook in my life either because I never wanted them to find me. So I was the only person on this planet. Even now, I'm 57. I don't have Facebook. I'm the only person that doesn't have Facebook or any social media. I have Instagram a few years ago because my 28-year-old daughter, when she moved out, I wanted to see what she was up to. So I did an Instagram, account. She realized what I was doing and she blocked me. So then then that was it. That was my whole thing with social media. So he tried to sue the state of New York to get access to Facebook because he said that was like against his civil rights. He was declined, but my attorney said, I think he's looking for you. So I decided I was going to come out and I was going to say what happened, because one of the things that I found out is that he in that 7 months when he escaped from prison, he was doing terrible things to other girls. And some in the process of working with the FBI now, there are 7 murders that took place. There's 4 girls that have been identified. We're trying to identify the other 3 that we believe that he's associated to. So
Wow.
here I was all these years living like this really private life, even though I was doing these readings. I didn't really want anyone to know who I was or, how to reach me. But when I realized that a year ago that he was out there and he was trying to find me, and he was, had the audacity to try to sue the state of New York to get the access to Facebook, which I don't even have. I thought, what? No, I'm not going to be private. I thought I'm going to tell the world, and I'm going to, put him behind bars, and I want everyone to know. And then something unexpected happened that I didn't anticipate. So when I did the podcast, first I got tons of edible arrangements and flowers and candy and, wine, and from all these clients and people that didn't know my story and didn't know what happened, because, here I was, like, for example, going to, a famous musician's party when I was in the 20s, and they would ask me, well, how are you psychic? What makes you so special? But I never wanted to tell my story. And even though there were a few people in Hollywood that did know my story, they kept it private. So I would just say, well, I don't know. I just know things. But I didn't want them to know. So when it finally came out a year ago, all these clients of mine reached out and, they were so gracious and so wonderful. But then I thought, because all these years when I would do a reading and I would tell people what I would predict, I think they thought, well, here you are, you have such a charmed life, you're a psychic, what do you know? How do you, you don't really know what it's like to go through difficult things, because I never told people that part of it. And so now I was able to say, listen, not only, because when I do a reading, I do a few things. I don't just tell you what I predict. I tell you what I predict, but I also say, it's going to be really hard or really sucky for a while, but this is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is what you're working towards. You can get through this. And in the past, I think people, because again, they just thought it was like me looking in my crystal ball, predicting it. But when I said, I know what you went through or are going through because I went through this really terrible thing, it changed my readings. Because even though I was, famous without being famous, I had this clientele and I was making tons of money for 45 years. It was like a new level of respect. And it did change things, because then people, felt different about me. They felt like the message that I was giving them wasn't just a hopeful one, but one from, a point of view that I understand the struggle, like a human struggle of like
Right.
what it's like going through. And
And Annette, I have to ask you this question. Why, with all your abilities and all your understanding of why things are in the world, the way the world works and everything, why do you believe this happened to you in this life? Is this something that and I say this I'm asking this question for a very specific reason because so many people go, poor me, poor me, poor me.
it's a
But
great question.
I want
I
you to tell
believe
them, yeah.
so. Okay, so this is my 57-year-old self right now. You and I, me 57, going to give you this grand answer. And I have known from the age of 13 so after the trial, my dad said that your mom is the one that did the $5 bet. That's why it happened. The guy escaped from prison and this wasn't random. I'm like, holy shit, because that's a whole different level of all this
Mm,
bad stuff. I realized from 13 to now that it had to happen and it was going to happen. But what I did realize was that I designed this. So I
mm,
believe what happens is before we incarnate, before we're here, and when I was my spiritual self on the other side, hanging out with my other spiritual self buddies, I said, listen, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go be human again. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. Why would you do that? I'm like, well, you know what? I need to learn for my soul's perfection. And I believe what happens is like when you go to high school and you pick your classes and sometimes you give yourself really difficult classes. And even your guidance counselor may say, that's too much. You're putting too much on your plate. So here I was, my spiritual self, knowing that I had to learn for my soul's perfection. And I believe that I chose it. And that's why I believe we all do. I don't think that anything is random. I think that we choose, because again, we're brave when we're spiritual. Before we come back in, I'm like, oh, I got this. I can handle this without knowing that I chose this. So it is not for me. It is for me. I think when I'm on the other side again, I'm going to have a talk with I'm going to be a Karen and talk to the manager and be like, you should have let me do that. That was too much. But I do realize that we all do choose what we are going to go through for our soul's perfection. And the goal, I believe, is to go through it, to learn from it, to master our human life so we can get to the spiritual side of it. So that's why I was able to embrace doing readings, and I just
mm.
wanted to be safe while I was doing it. But I know that I was the one that did it, which
So
sounds
yeah,
crazy,
no,
kind of.
listen, crazy is relative in this show. Uh,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Many people think I'm crazy, so it's a very relative in this show without question. Well, before we continue, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us, and
Thank you for
saying it
asking.
so, yeah, and saying so publicly this because I feel it's going to help a lot of people listening, help them heal, and also let them process things that happen to them. Because, like I said, I don't think there's a soul that comes down here, maybe with a few exceptions of a couple of avatars, but other than that that doesn't
Right.
escape without any negative things or any
Yes.
trials or
Yes.
tribulations or any struggles, because that's why we're here. It's the
That's the
point of
whole,
this.
that's the whole reason. Right. And I actually believe that, I don't want to say that I'm this brave warrior because, I mean, it is horrific. What I went through, even now,
Oh
I
my
mean, I'm
God.
triggered all the
Yeah.
time. Like I said, this is the 45th year of when it happened to me. And so I think about all these things that have happened in my life and all these opportunities I've had and all these people I know. But I mean, but I also am just like a normal person. I do readings all day long from my home. And I mean, even my neighbor doesn't even think I have a job, like makes sarcastic remarks to me when I get the mail. And he's like, women in 2024 work. And I'm like, okay. And I said to my husband, I don't think he thinks I have a job. And here I'm like solving, cases for the police and the FBI and all these like high level things I'm doing. And he thinks I'm like, day drinking and watching Netflix all day. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
And so,
Annette, what does he really think? No, I mean, listen, when
right,
people ask me what
right,
I do, I'm like, I talk to people on YouTube.
right.
It's
Yeah, right,
insane.
right.
It's
Because unless
insane.
if
It's
you
insane.
know, yeah, and I have an annual party every year with about 200 people. And even a couple years ago, so there's a couple cops on my street, and one of the cops is like, "What do you do for a living?" And I go, "Well, what do you think I do?" And he says, "Well, a lot of people come in and out of your house. So I said to my husband, he probably thinks I'm either a prostitute or a drug dealer. I go, I'm a
Hmm.
psychic. And he goes, okay, I would never have guessed that, but I'm glad to hear, that was what you were doing. But so now everybody knows. I mean, before I was in advertising, but it was for my own safety because I had a young daughter at the time and I wanted to have a normal life. And I was really afraid. I mean, I can't even emphasize that enough. I mean, right now, I mean, and I'm still not afraid, by the way. I am afraid, but I'm not, I feel like I'm going to take over my story because I now have so an article is going to come out in the New York Times as a follow-up to what happened, that he is off parole and he lives down the street from me. There is a documentary.
Down the street or
Well, I
30
mean,
minutes?
30 minutes, but to me, it's down the street, so
Sure.
he's 30 minutes away. So, um, there's going to be a documentary that comes out, and there's also an opportunity for a TV show that's going to come out based on me and a few other psychics. And at the time when this opportunity came, I said, I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't even take selfies. I don't want to be on a reality show. And they came to me, and I kept at first. One of my clients of many years said, this big shot wants to do the show about you. And I said, I'm not interested. And I wouldn't even take the Zoom calls. I would just not even go on. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, because I didn't want that. But then when I realized this gives me a platform to do what I want to do as far as my story, because that's the reason. It's not for more readings, because I don't need more readings. I don't need more people, but it's because I want people to know when you go through really terrible things, we are the ones that design it. We did it for a reason. But if you're brave enough to get through it and understand that you'll have to learn for your soul's perfection, there's really fabulous things waiting for you. Because every day I can tell you that I live with such gratitude. I feel like every day I won the lottery, and sometimes I have really difficult days. I was working on a missing child case last week, and I found the child, but the child was not alive. And that most of the time is the
Mhm.
case, that they're not alive. So it's not always a happy story, but it gives the family closure and it gives them peace, because we all want to be found and we all want to be, put to rest and given closure. So I realized that is what I was here for. I realize now in hindsight why I then, when I made up my classes for this lifetime, why I had to go through all this. And I'm grateful for it, even though it sounds crazy, because I had to go through something so terrible to be able to
Mhm.
identify and to deal with these thousands of people that I deal with, and to help with missing children. Or because I don't think we always want to help people, and I don't think I would do it. I don't think, because after you make a certain amount of money, I think I'd be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to live it up. I'm going to go shopping. I wouldn't always be answering the calls. I wouldn't always be doing readings, but I want to give people hope, because I remember what it was like not feeling hopeful, not feeling like I could go on. I sometimes give people the analogy of like Wizard of Oz. Remember when Dorothy was, up in the tornado and the
Mhm.
house landed, and she opened the door and all she saw the munchkins and the different colors and everything it wasn't in black and white anymore. And I feel like that's what happened to me. Once all this happened, it was like I was able to see life differently than everybody else. And even though, yeah, your life does feel black and white and it is really difficult and a lot of bad things happen to us, if we can just plow through them and know that we're going to get to the other side, and it's okay that we're going through that, and be excited about what's happening. I believe that not only does it change us and our experience, but it's a ripple effect to all the people that we deal with. Because if I do a reading for you and I help you and I give you hope, I don't just give you hope, but everybody you deal with now, you act different, you vibrate different. So it is a ripple effect. And I believe that it helps us at a higher level, our higher consciousness, but I think it helps humanity. So I don't think that I'm so special that I myself, because I tell people all the time, if I lose my car keys, I can't even find them. My husband sometimes says, you can find a body, but you can't find your car keys. Or I constantly tell him, call my phone. He's like, can't you just, the same way you helped the police last week, find your own phone? I can't sometimes even do that for myself, but I realized the big picture of it, and it's a miracle. It's a great life. It's a great life to have, and I'm happy to be able to share it to help people get through all the hard things they
Yeah.
have to get through.
No, Annette, you mentioned that that sometimes there's a struggle, and that we have to plow through it to get to the other side of it. There seems to be a collective struggle that the planet's
Yes.
going through, that humanity is going through, and our consciousness is going through.
Right.
As a psychic, what do you see as this whole kind of stuff that we're going through, and to give people hope and also to give people the truth of what's coming?
Well, I think it's good actually, because think about this. So I actually, when I did the original, so I've done a couple podcasts now, and like I said, years ago I was on other things, but I then for like 30 years didn't want to be on TV, didn't want to do radio shows. So I was kind of just doing my own thing. Then a year ago I did this one podcast, and I made a prediction on the podcast that freaked a lot of people out. They were and even freaked out the person I did the podcast for, that everybody was all nervous. I said, listen, you don't have to even look at me, because if you look at the history books, we've always, from the beginning of time, there's always been a lot of heartache for everybody. There's always been wars. There's always been a depression. There's always been money, right. There's always disease. This is not a new thing. 2024 and what we're going through is not new, but I believe that we have to go through it because I think two things happen. I think that as we go through our own personal struggles and we raise our consciousness to a higher level of consciousness, and we do plow through it, and we do master our human life. So it doesn't mean that we never have struggles, but we can get through them, and then we can vibrate higher and have the best life we can. Then it's a ripple effect to other people, which helps connect to humanity, that then the higher consciousness is more. And I do believe that we do, as time goes on, collectively get this higher vibrational level. Because even now in 2024, I remember 30 years ago, it didn't feel like the universe was vibrating high. I mean, I felt like I was, but I didn't know a lot of people that were. I know a lot of people that are, because humanity is, because we're getting smarter. Like even with AI, I know, AI is so interesting. You love it or you hate it, depending on how you feel about it. But I say, well, it's just like a microwave. I remember in high school, we were like the last one on the block to get a microwave. And I thought, oh, this is kind of crazy. But now when you think of a microwave, that's nothing. Pretty soon, 20 years from now, we'll think AI is nothing. That it's just an evolution the way that it's supposed to go. So I don't think that anything that goes on in the world that is difficult is a bad thing, because that is the other thing that all these experiences have given me. I see things as events. I don't think of them as positive or negative. And even though I know, and sometimes they use the analogy of like the lottery or breaking your leg. I know from a human perspective, if you win the lottery, that feels great. And if you break your leg, that doesn't feel great. But breaking your leg from a spiritual standpoint might be better than winning the lottery, because usually the most change happens when we go through difficult times, and we do have a better life. So, in that moment, you think, oh, it was an accident that I broke my leg, but it's not really an accident. You were meant to break your leg. It's an inconvenience. You don't want to break your leg, but you were supposed to. So when wars go on, when there's diseases, when all these terrible things happen, and they are terrible to some degree, I don't think it's like the world is under attack. I just believe it's the way it's supposed to be, because that is the whole point. That is how we learn.
If you don't mind me asking, what was that prediction that you made on that other show that got everybody all wild up?
Well, here we go. So we can get everyone riled up. It was about the financial, future. So
before you continue, I want to preface this. We are due economic ups and downs. There's always the boom and the bust. We haven't had anything since 2008. We are about a decade overdue for something to happen economically. You could just look out throughout the history. Every 8 to 10 years, something happens. So without that, I just wanted to preface that for everybody to know that's not this crazy thing.
Thank you. And so actually, when I did the first podcast, I did it and it was taped. So after it was over, my husband said, how'd it go? And I go, oh, it went so fast, I don't even remember what I said. And so when that part came out and I heard about that prediction, and then, a lot of backlash, my husband said, well, that's barely a prediction, because everybody knows that, because it's just the way life works. You're right. We are due. So what I said that was the controversial part was not that we would just go through this financial hardship, but I said that the way that we use money, currency, was going to change. And I said at that moment, it wasn't even about Bitcoin at that time. And because I think even the person asked me, well, do you mean Bitcoin or whatever, cryptocurrency? And I go, well, kind of, but not even really. Not that, not like what you would think. I said, so what I believe will happen with our financial money, it's going to collapse. So I think the word collapse is what makes people sink. But, but like COVID. When COVID happened, even though many people knew that COVID was going to happen, and they didn't have a name for it, but they knew, because again, like even like Bill Gates knew from 10 years prior that something like a pandemic was going to happen and was trying to tell everybody that this was going to happen. It happened to us and it changed the world. I believe that the financial crisis that will happen will change the way that we barter and use money. We will use a different exchange, and it's not good or bad. It's just different. It's just because something will happen that attacks our financial system. So it's not just like we go through a depression or a recession. That's one thing. It's the actual currency that changes. So it would be more like, think about it now. Nowadays, I can go out to lunch with my daughter and I can, Zelle her the money. But, 30 years ago, that sounded crazy. We couldn't even imagine that would happen. So we will no longer have dollar bills or euros or that. It will be more of a, like a transactional computer wire system, not actual, give me change for my dollar here. So I think that what makes people nervous is, so I had a lot of people that contacted me that were senior citizens that said, I don't even use the computer. I don't have online banking. How am I going to manage? I said, listen, I didn't say this to make anybody panic. I just made a prediction that, and you could just see what happens. You don't have to even believe what I have to say, but that is just like COVID. Nobody would have believed that we would have all been walking around in masks, that everybody would die,
The
that
world
we would
was
have
shut down for 3
quarantine.
months. Yeah.
Right. That we would be sitting in, working from home with our, pajamas on, we underwear on the bottom and a tie and a sport coat on top on Zoom. Nobody would have ever imagined that happened. But I say to people, as awful as it was, it kind of reset the world, because think about how we weren't in the rat race anymore. We got to eat dinner with our family, do puzzles, it felt like 30 years ago to me. So even though a lot of bad things happened, I think a lot of good things came out of COVID. And I think the same thing with the financial crisis. So the prediction is more not just that it's a recession or a depression, it's the exchange of the currency. But again, I don't even know that that's so much of a prediction, because I think that anybody, if you really think about it, should know that that's where we're headed anyways.
Yeah, there's that's not a question. And I've heard about the currency as well, and that also makes sense because of the way we've been inflating our currency and
Right,
propping it up and constantly printing money, and the US alone is like what 30 trillion in the hole or something insane
right. I mean,
number. Yeah.
there's a better way to do it. I mean, right. And I
There's
think
a
that we realize that in a few years. Yes.
So let me ask you this. When you said there's a better way of doing it, I've been saying, and many of my guests have said, that the old systems need to come down. Older systems that are not serving us anymore need to come down to make way for these new systems. And that's in
Right,
every avenue of life, from
right,
religion to economic to healthcare to education to media, all of it. These older
right.
systems need to be brought down so these new systems can come up. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, because think of it, it's almost like you have to make space for the new. So you got to get rid of the old. The old has to break down. Most people are not forward thinking enough or brave enough to meet things head on. There, a lot of people are afraid of change and how it's going to affect them. So it has to almost break down, because we're so primal, so primitive, actually, when you think about it, that we think we're so smart and such higher beings and higher consciousness, but we're not, because when something new, we all freak out. I mean, I've had so many AI conversations, and I say to people, I mean, it's helpful. I mean, I think AI has helped me with several things recently. I thought, oh, this is freaking fantastic. Why would you not want this? So it almost has to come down to a screeching halt. Things have to break down completely so that we can evolve. But that's just the natural way of things. And it's not a scary thing at all.
Now, is there anything else that you can tell people in regards to the rest of this year and the coming decade that we have to, besides economic, that you would like to share with the audience?
So, you're a great interviewer, because I didn't know what we were going
Thank
to
you.
talk about. I was thinking, all right, should I say this, or this? So I'm going to say a few things that, so prior to the assassination attempt with Trump,
Mhm.
July 13th, I'll never forget it. I actually had that weekend off. I was not going to work that weekend. So I said to
Mhm.
my husband, let's do what normal people do. Let's go out to dinner. And then the next day we were going to go to a movie, like a matinee, like two old people. And I said, let's just do normal things. Okay. So I was out to dinner And I had my cell phone on the table out to dinner. And he's like, why do you have your cell phone? I go, a client's going to reach me. They're just going to text me, whatever. My phone started blowing up and I answered it. And it ended up that there was a high level official connected to this intel on this assassination attempt, but it was the day before. And they said to me, and he's a client of mine. And this person said to me, where are you? And I said, I'm out to dinner. And because they could hear that I wasn't like at home or whatever. And they're like, well, I need to ask you some questions about the president. If you think that's not just like, hey, are you going to meet your boyfriend next week? I said, I need to like go home and meditate. I said, can I get back to you? And they go, no, this is, we have intel on this. We need an answer. And I said, all right, well, I'll leave dinner. I'll go home. I'll call you back like in an hour. So I went home, I did a meditation, and I saw in real time things that were going to unfold. I called them back, and it was, many people involved in this. And I said what I thought would happen. And they said to me, well, do you believe that it can be stopped? And I said, no, it won't. I said, but the thing is, and they using the word assassination. I go, no, there's no assassination. I said, but because the intel that we have is about a president is going to die. But I said Biden. And they said, no, it's not Biden. And I said, oh, because I originally thought when they said, is the president going to be assassinated? And I said, no. I said, no, he's not going to be assassinated. I said, so when they asked me, well, do you believe it could be stopped? I said, not only do I think it cannot be stopped, I said, it's already in motion. I said, it'll happen really soon. And they said, well, how soon? I said, well, and I knew it was Trump because it wasn't Biden. And at that time, Biden was running still. And so I said, if you looked at his schedule and you looked at whatever he has scheduled for the next 12 weeks, it will be one of these events that are already scheduled. It's not like a future event. So I knew it was going to happen soon. And so I, said the chain of events that I thought that took place. And then the next day I was at the movies, again, during the day. And my daughter texted me, my 28-year-old daughter, and said, Trump just got shot. And I'm like, so I go to the lobby and my phone blew up and the people that contacted me the night before. And so I've been involved in that since that took place. And that is not something that I would have wanted to be involved in because, unlike helping children and doing that, because it's kind of a catch-22, you help, I help in some way, but other people got hurt and other people, people were killed and it wasn't I predicted the presidential elections like since I've been a kid and I've never been wrong. And so about a year ago, a bunch of people that even when Trump won, I said that Trump was going to win way before he won. And then when he did win, I was on a radio show and, that person, made a big deal that I had predicted. I was like one of the only people that predicted that he would win, whatever. So then I predicted he wouldn't win. And so this time around, I kept saying that I don't believe that Trump will win, but I said, but Biden's not going to win either. And at the time, people can those two. So what do you mean? And I go, well, I don't know what I mean. I don't even know. I just know it's not either one of them. And I have a lot of clients now, like, high level politicians who asking me for months who at the time didn't realize. And so when all this stuff with Biden happened, then that's when I realized that's why I was being shown that it would be neither one of them. So I can see the election. I see also that for us, the financial crisis that will take place. So I believe that in the next 2 years, like crazy, people are going to go towards spirituality, like your neighbor, your best friend, people who don't talk about it much, all of a sudden become spiritual beings. They kind of get the big picture because I do believe that there's a shift with the world that makes us all, like when I was a kid and I had this near-death experience, then I had my spirit guide, then I saw that video of my life and I got the bigger meaning. I feel like we all just kind of start to get it within the next 2 years. And I don't think that's accidentally happening. I think collectively humanity is about to march in a different direction. So all of a sudden we get to this level with again, doesn't matter who you are or what age you are, you just feel spiritual and you kind of understand, you kind of get this. That changes us as a whole, and that changes our species and our race, because I do believe that there are major changes with, when you think about it, we were cavemen, And then, we've evolved over all these years. And I think that there's a major evolution that's taking place now, but it can't just be like it is now. It can't just be you and I living the way we are. So I think that everybody has to get on board. And I do think that part of what COVID was, which is, I know sounds terrible, and I lost a lot of people in COVID. So I don't want to say this lightly, but I think that it was a reboot. I think that it was, the universe saying in a very big way, we need to reset. We need, things are not going the right way. This is a rat race. Everyone's, not thinking correctly, because not only did a lot of people pass away, and that was terrible, but it changed the way we thought. It changed the way we processed life and the way that we interacted with one another. And so I believe that when we go towards this idea of spirituality, whatever your beliefs are, it is because our consciousness raises. And we become smarter, because one of the things also that, during my teenage years, so again, I wasn't just like a normal teenager. There was a period of time that I felt like I knew really like what a UFO would be, or what an alien would be, but I didn't really care about it. I wasn't studying it. I wasn't trying to know. And I just would know. I would just have this feeling like I knew. And then there was a period of about several months where I would actually like know. I would just have a thought, and I would go to bed and it would feel like I was having a dream of like an experience, like being on a UFO or with aliens. And then a couple months later, I realized like, okay, these are not experiences like I'm having where I'm dreaming. I'm actually, I think I'm sleeping, but I'm actually experiencing this because I knew it. Just like that near-death experience, I knew that it was real. But I wasn't telling everybody because it felt foreign. It was, again, so many years ago, not a lot of people were open to it. And even now, I don't tell many people about it. But one of the things that is notable about that is I remember being like around these aliens, let's say, that were so high tech, were so like vibrating very, very high, and vibrating to a point where like, it was like, so when I vibrate high, I tell people that I can see a color, but also is music, which is also a language. So it's not just like a vibration. It's like everything mixed together. These aliens were all those things back when I even knew what that was. And we were so, we're so primitive. I feel like we become more like they are, but we have to have a higher consciousness. We evolve to that level. So that's why in 2 years that'll happen.
So what I'm hearing is also from different channelers and other psychics that have been on the show is that we're going to have a major encounter in the next 2 years with beings from and I don't want to put the tinfoil hat on. I try to keep this house as I try to keep the show as grounded as it can be. But the facts are that there's probably some life out there. There's just by logic,
100.
by numbers, by math. So is it possible? Sure. And I keep hearing it from multiple things, but when I hear it's not going to be Independence Day, or aliens, like a movie Predator or something like that. It's going to be something that's going to help evolve and lift us to a higher and higher place. That's very, very fascinating. I appreciate you giving me all that insight in regards to the political stuff. So you're saying that you're predicting that Harris is going to win at this point because they're the only two in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And now,
by the way, for everybody listening or watching, that's not even who I want to necessarily, and not who I don't want to. So I'm not making, it's not what I want. I'm
personal.
Just my prediction. Yes, exactly.
So so what I heard as well is that if either of them win, there's going to be some sort of chaos. There's going to be some sort of upheaval. There's going to be some sort of something that happens. So if Harris wins, are we going to have another January 6th? Is there some other stuff that's going to bubble up because of that?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you like I would tell other people, because sometimes, when I do a reading, because it's not always unicorns and rainbows. And when I do a reading, it's not all happy things, and they're not always, I get cursed out a lot. People are, are not always happy. And then they eventually call me back or come back and apologize because things came true, but it's not all great. So I even hate to say that I do feel like something like that will happen, because then people say, well, then you're putting it in everyone's mind. Well, that's nonsense. But I do believe something like that will happen, because I do feel like there's such unrest in this world that, think about it. Yes, it matters who wins a presidential election for anybody in any country, and those things do matter. But if we all take our own personal responsibility and know that we all have a choice in this, we can all, go and vote. We can all fight for what we believe is right. Because, like, even when I was a 12-year-old girl, I could have died, or I could have been, brave and jumped out of that window and just did what I had to do. So sometimes we do have to do the hard things to make our lives better. So if you really have strong convictions and you believe that so and so should be the president, or you want laws to be changed, well, then fight for those things to happen. But I do believe that there will be a big part of the world, of this country, that are not going to like the results, and I do believe that they will retaliate. And I don't think that's a great thing to do, and I don't want to, make that prediction. And again, people are going to say, "Oh, you put that in their minds," but that's crazy, because I'm not, because people know right from wrong. But I do believe that that will happen. Yeah.
Interesting.
And I
And
think it's terrible. It's terrible that will. But
no, no, of course,
yeah.
but we've gone through it before, and it's again it's not as much of a prediction as it is a logical stance on something like that, because you're
Thank
looking
you.
at it. I mean, you're
Yes.
not talking about like, I believe that the moon is going to crash into the earth in a year and a half. Like, it's something that's so you saying that goes, that makes sense. It happened already.
Right. Right.
It literally happened
Yes.
already in
Yes.
2020.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
only logic would dictate that there would be some sort of response
Right.
regarding that, so
Yes.
and like you said before, I think some of these things might need to happen in order for us to wake up to, like, these
I think
wars
it
that are
does.
happening around the
Yes.
world and things
Yes.
like, we
Yes.
have to go, no, that's not what we want to be. And that's not
Right.
what we want to be. Is
Right.
there an event that's going to, you say in the next 2 years, we're going to wake up? And I agree with you. I think this decade is a very pivotal decade. And there's going to be many more things coming in the decades to come. But this decade specifically, since 2020, we came in hot. We came
Yeah.
in very hot. There hasn't been a decade like this in my lifetime, nor in yours,
Right.
I think.
Right.
That so much has transpired already. And we still have, 6 years left.
So I will
It's
tell you this. So I believe in, so this is 2024 and I'm 57 now. So I can't do the quick math in my head, but when I believe around 2050. And now when I was a kid, and again, I think it was like 13 or 14, 2050, I saw that year, and that seemed like, really far off. I mean, now it even seems far off now, but 40 years ago was even really far off. 2050 is going to be the biggest game changer, because see, these little things that we're talking about now, like the financial thing that's going to happen with the change of currency, presidential election, again, kind of the same thing, no big deal. These are minor steps, but in 2050, I think there's a total reset. I think what happens is that we are vibrating at a very high level. I do not believe that we are living like human beings, like we live now, like we're getting in our car. I feel like it is very space age-y, very much so. And I don't think, because when you think about 10 years ago, well, you might be driving a nicer car than you were 10 years ago, but you still were driving a car. You weren't, you weren't in, you weren't hovering over something, like the Jetsons. You weren't doing that. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But I think in 2050, everything changes. And I think that human beings look different. I think that medicine is different. I don't think that you have to take medicine anymore. I believe that you will be healed by light, like colored light. I believe that, like even years ago, you can't imagine having anything done laparoscopically. You would have to be invasively cut. And now lots of things are, laparoscopic. I don't believe even that will happen. I believe it'll be like light therapy that will change. So in the year of 2050, I think is the biggest reset that, some of us will be alive for, but I think that the world is completely different. Because in the last few decades, it's been the same. We just became more. We have cell phones and microwaves, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but it seems that the speed of everything is growing so much more exponentially. From when 2000, I mean, I had a website in 1997. I had a online business in 97, 98.
Wow.
And from that, I know exactly, right? And I was one of the first people on YouTube in 2005, 2006. So from that time to where we are right now, that's 20, 25 years at this point. It is night and day from where we
Right.
were. But every year that's gone by, I mean, AI showed up a year ago, a year and a half ago,
Right.
really,
Right.
really in the zeitgeist. When
Yeah.
ChatGPT hit, I
Right.
still remember like people going, "Oh, what's this?" AI thing, and oh, what's this thing?
Right.
It was the exact same thing that happened in 96 when I was in college going, what's this internet thing? Where do I get that
Yeah,
AOL
right,
floppy
right,
disk so I can log
right.
into flop? And it was that thing. Oh, what's this new streaming? What's this Netflix? What's it called? Like I
Oh,
remember
right.
all of
Yeah.
this, and now
Yes.
it's just like, oh yeah, of course. Now it's moving exponentially
Right.
faster.
Right.
We have rockets that land
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
We're taking tourists up into space for very expensive tourists, but tourists nevertheless. So
And pretty
there's
soon that'll be nothing. That'll be like going to Central Park.
yeah, you and I will jump on just like going on
Right.
a plane.
Yeah. Just,
You and I
yeah.
would
Like,
jump
hey,
on a
yeah,
plane.
not
I
around
want to
tomorrow. I'm going to the moon. Yeah. See you
yeah,
next Thursday. Yeah.
and that's what we were promised, by the way, when we were growing up. This space age flying car stuff. I'm still waiting, but it hasn't come up, hasn't caught up to
Right.
us
Right. Right.
yet.
Right. Right.
But that's all very fascinating. And also that this everything you're talking about, um, there is hope for all of this. And I've been saying this to people for a while. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be challenging, but we will be better on the other side of this. We are getting to a place where hopefully by 2020, 2100, our species and our consciousness is raising to a much, 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 much
I believe it
higher
will.
level.
I believe it will. And I think, and again, knowing that I don't think one event is better than the other, I think they're two different experiences. And again, I can say this from my own life because I've had a really horrific, I've had really great things, but really, really terrible, horrific things. So they have to happen. Good and bad have to happen, or what we perceive to be good and bad, so that you can value things. So things have a meaning, they have a purpose, they're worth fighting for. Because I have such a fabulous life. And again, I do tons of work with missing children, and it's really sad and terrible and a lot of evil people. But every day I feel grateful. I feel thankful for my life. I feel thankful for my neighbor who, says smart ass things to me out at the mailbox, who doesn't think I have a job. I think that's funny. I think, because it's not just the big major things in life. It's every little detail of your life. And because it's the totality of everything that makes us have a great life and know the meaning of it. And I tell people it doesn't matter if you're going through a challenging time, because you're not always going to. And you should actually be glad that you are, because now something's going to change. There is change on the other side for you, and that, which is going to be better and bigger. And I do feel like we are supposed to help each other. And I do believe that that's why I do this work. But I do believe that humanity has to change. And you think about it now, when my daughter was in elementary school and I was doing readings, and when I was in California, I was known for like being a famous medium. And I didn't even want to be a medium actually at all. It kind of scared me. And for some reason, I was really known for that. And so my daughter went to school, elementary school, and said that my mother talks to dead people. And the school called me, and I had to go to school and talk to them. And they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, actually, she's right. And they thought it was great. But, now in 2024, nobody even thinks it's a big deal. But back then it was a big deal.
Oh, it was
So
a huge deal.
Oh, I thought Child Protection Services was going to get involved, and, she was going to have to go to special counseling, and so would I. But now, everybody that vibrates higher, and they believe in higher consciousness, but not to the degree that we're going to. So I think that I'm really excited about 2 years from now. I don't care about the election. I do care for personal reasons about certain things, but I know that those little things just get us to that bigger picture of the 2 years, because that's when I feel like humanity really does change on a grand scale. And I think it's an exciting time to be around.
Is there going to be a catalyst for that change, or is it just going to happen?
There will be a catalyst. And again,
But so everyone watching and listening, when she's pausing, and I'm please correct me if I'm wrong, you're hearing the answers coming in from the other side, and you're
right.
pausing.
And
you're
I'm also trying to word it to not make, the average person freak out or collapse with panic, because I never want to do that. And again, I don't think that that's what it's going to be. So I believe that there's a few things that happen. We do have the financial crisis that, again, it's not, in the long run, we're better off, but a lot of people don't meet it like that. So there'll be a lot of panic. There will be something similar to COVID, but different, that makes us panic. And there will be more beings. And again, this is where, a lot of people that know what I do for a living, I am a medium and I am a psychic, but I don't talk about aliens often and hardly ever. But I believe that there's going to be a lot of, I don't want to say alien invasion because that sounds, not
Oh,
great, but I
very,
do
very
believe,
Hollywood.
yeah, right. But I do believe, kind of the idea that regular people will have interactions with aliens or higher beings from other galaxies that there's no question it happened. Not just like, oh, I think it might have happened. They're like, no, no, no. Last Tuesday at 3 o'clock, this happened, and people from all across the world, because I think that invasion, which again, it's not a scary thing. It's not an invasion, but that like we need beings that are higher than us to kind of, remind us that you guys are still not where you need to be. We're light years, no pun intended, ahead of you guys. So I do believe that you're going to hear a lot more of that. And I do think that people kind of mainstream people try to steer away from that idea of like what we think an alien is because it seems so foreign. And even myself, I mean, I even am imagining a month from now and, my neighbor who's going to get the mail is going to see me and he's going to be like, what is going to happen with these aliens or all these other people that are going to say this? But it should just kind of be, I don't want to say obvious, but it feels really obvious to me that that would be the next step. And I think that is the catalyst, that part.
And I have a dream that one day, people in the future will look back on the show as an oddity. That they're like, they really needed to talk about this kind of stuff, about frequency
You
and
know what?
vibration. And like, it's just so rudimentary. It's the equivalent of you and I looking back in 2000, 2000 years ago and going, don't you guys get that that's not no? And do you not hear what Jesus is saying? I mean,
Right.
he's got some good ideas here, guys. Like, what's going on? Like, it would
Right,
that
right,
kind of, it's like
right,
somewhere
right.
there'll be a computer and some kid will log in and go, next level. So who is this?
Yeah, right.
Mom, what's a psychic? Aren't we psychic? Everyone's psychic.
Yeah,
So
right,
what do
right,
you
right,
mean? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly. Because they'll already be at their highest level, vibrating high on a regular basis, not, us getting to that point. I 100% agree. And to me, it feels like that just seems like the natural step for everybody. But I mean, I think that, the big message is that we live our daily life, a lot of people in fear, because most people, I tell people, we are supposed to enjoy the whole thing. We don't just enjoy it when we get to the point we think we're supposed to get to, but along the way, even during the trials and tribulations, because if you don't enjoy all of it, I mean, sometimes I'll do a reading for a person and a young person, and it'll be a young woman, let's say 30 years old, and I'll, tell her who she's going to marry. And I can't tell you how many times they'll say to me that bride to be will say, well, will I be happy? And I said, what? That's what you're hoping for. I said, you know what? You might not be happy because if you're happy now, you know, just because you get to that point, you meet Prince Charming, maybe you won't be happy because happiness is a state of mind. It's being in the moment and living your best life, feeling hopeful, feeling positive, knowing that you can get through all this. It's not that, when you get to this end road that all these great things happen. That's not really the idea. And I think that that's kind of what motivates me to do readings. I mean, because I don't know that I would always want to do this. It doesn't always feel great doing it, on a daily basis, giving individual readings day after day after day. But every time I do a reading, I feel joyful. I feel hopeful because it does change people's lives. Because even though I feel like, all right, I know this because of everything I've gone through, but that doesn't mean that the person next to me knows it. And
right.
and I do believe that it helps everybody and changes your life.
Now, Ned, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests. What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Living a fulfilled life?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like I live one now, and I think that it is living in the moment and not being afraid. And when I say not being afraid, I don't mean like of the boogeyman, but like not being afraid of, oh, next week I might not have enough money, or next week I might get cancer, because maybe I will get cancer, or maybe I will lose my job, but that's okay. I can, those things can happen, and I can be prepared because I'm going to, take it one day at a time. So living a fulfilled life for me is just living for this moment, not freaking out about the future, because I'll worry about next Tuesday. And I do live a fulfilled life, and I have lived a fulfilled life for a long time. And I was a single parent for many, many years, and I, didn't always have a lot of money. I mean, I always made a lot of money, but I was like hustling. I raised my daughter in Long Island, and we lived in a really great neighborhood, but I was a single parent, and I was like, doing reading after reading after reading. And it took all the money that I made to raise her. So it wasn't like we were rolling in money. So I've gone through a lot of really difficult things, but even back then when I was, struggling and a single parent and hustling, I felt like my life was fulfilled because I felt like I understood the meaning of life, and I understood that that's okay that I'm going through all that because I still can live for this moment. So that's what I believe. Living in the moment is fulfilling.
Now, if you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Annette, what advice would you give her?
Oh, it's gonna make me cry. I would say, well done.
Oh, beautiful. How do you define God or source?
I think God is us all. I think that we're bits and pieces of God, but humanity is God. So we're all you and I and the other billions of people are God. And I believe that when we're able to reach our higher consciousness, we're like, oh, I didn't know I was always God. I didn't know I was Jesus, but we are. And I think that that's what it is. I think it's higher consciousness. And I think, you know, one thing I do have to say that feels important is that I do feel like time is an illusion. And even
Yes.
that feels confusing to say. Even I'm kind of confused, but I know that. So like I know that my 57-year-old self who is talking to my 12-year-old self to say, jump out of the window. Because even though you talked to the FBI 2 hours ago and they know that you're missing and you've been on the TV, they're not going to save you. So you have to jump out of the window to get out. You have to save yourself. It's all happening right now. I don't believe there's past, present, and future. I believe it's all now, which is so confusing. People are like, what? So that's why I would say to my younger self, well done, because, it brings us all to this full circle moment.
What is love?
I think life is all of us interacting so that we can build our higher consciousness so that as humanity, we can work together. We can be one, we can, how you feel connected to one person. You can meet somebody at a party and you just naturally gravitate towards them and you're like, oh my God, it feels like we've known each other forever. I think that is when we feel like that mostly about everybody, and that it's just the big picture of us all coming together, that it's not, I could want a certain president to win and you could want somebody else. And I could, have a different career than you do. We can all have differences, but we're vibrating the same way because we're vibrating high. Because I think that when we go through wars or disease or famine or kidnappings or whatever, that's us vibrating very low, our lower consciousness. That's not our higher being. So that's here. We're supposed to be here.
So the question was, what is love?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I think love is that. I think love is everything. I think it's us being collectively together. I think it's a state of being. I feel like it's hopefulness. I feel like it's me feeling like I feel connected to you. I feel that love is everything. I think that love is the bottom line, that because if love wasn't the basis of the foundation, you wouldn't go forward. It almost keeps you going. But it's easy to recognize love when everything's great, when you have enough money, when you're married to the right person, when your kids are great. When life is good, it's easy to define love. It's really, really hard to define love when you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from, or if you are even going to have one, when you have terminal cancer, when your kids are missing, when when really awful things are happening. But that is love too, because you have to go through both to experience both, the light and the dark.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
I think to go through our human existence, our human experience for our soul's perfection, to learn, to grow, to become higher beings. Because I feel like when we are no longer here and we are on the other side, which is just right in front of me, vibrating in a different, it's not heaven, 3,000 miles in a cloud somewhere. It's just, somebody passed away is, 8 inches away from me or a foot away from me, and they're vibrating at a very high speed. So I think that, ask the question again so I can answer that directly.
What is the ultimate purpose of life?
Yeah, I think it's to live our human experience for soul's perfection, to learn to be the highest elevated spiritual being that we can be. So it's like going through school. You go through first grade through 10th grade to learn. Same thing with this.
And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work that you're doing in the world?
So just like I was not on Facebook, and I still am not, I do have a website that I started a year ago. So that just started. And that's my name, AnnetteBricca.com. And that's how to find me.
And I will put that link in the show notes and in the description. And Annette, do you have any parting messages for the audience?
Yeah, I would say to anybody who is watching or listening to not, and again, we all feel different about different things, and some things may come across as scary, but that is never my intention. because I mean, really, truly living a life of many different things happening to me, I know that there is a greater purpose for all of us. I know that to live a hopeful, joyful life, again, despite what's going on, is the meaning of life, and that, we can get to the other side, and to try to vibrate as high as we can to get through it. And I think that that is, my message for everybody. When I do a reading for anybody, it always is to, I do a meditation before I do a reading. And I always say, because I'm always worried it's not going to work. Even though I've done, hundreds of thousands of readings since I was a kid, I still am nervous every time. And I just say, please tell me something that I can help this person. And so I just want everyone to know that whatever you get from this today, it's not meant to be scary. It is actually the opposite, that there is, something more for you waiting, that you can get through it, that there is a reason to get through it, that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for sure.
Annette, it has been absolutely a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for being so raw and honest and sharing your journey with all of us. I hope it really does help a lot of people watching. And I look forward to our next conversation in studio here
It'll
in
be
Austin.
in person. Yes.
In
yes.
person
yes.
next time.
Yes, in person.
I-
My pleasure. Yes, I cannot wait. And I want to thank you for this opportunity, because like I said, there's things I've shared today that I didn't plan on sharing. I didn't think I actually, if you would have asked me 3 hours ago, I would have said, there's no way I'm going to say that. And it just felt right and perfect. And I appreciate the opportunity to even have said that, because I do think it makes a difference. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.